Welcome, everybody, to the introductory session of ETMOOC Part 2. Nobody ever thought it was going to be anything beyond Part 1 10 years ago when we all gathered. For those of you new to the community, you can see, I hope on your screens at this point, Alec Koros, who initiated the whole thing about 10 years ago, and very foolishly at the end of 10 weeks thought, okay, we're all over. Thanks, everybody. That was fun. And we just refused to go home. The party was too much fun. For the first year, we continued to meet informally with Alec joining us whenever he felt like joining us. And we did a variety of things, live tweet chats. We were doing some things, I think, with Skype at that point, and continuing our own self-led education for about a year. Then we started doing annual reunions. When we hit the 10th reunion about a month and a half ago, we're thinking, it's probably time for ETMOOC Part 2. So we kicked around some ideas, had left that meeting with some general ideas of where we might go and when we might roll it out sometime around May or June of 2023. This was back in February. When we had the first planning meeting about a month ago, I came in a little late. This is your pointers. Never show up late for an ETMOOC meeting. I showed up about 10 minutes late, at which point I learned that not only had the whole thing expanded beyond what we'd initially talked about to encompass AI in general, but we were rolling it out in about a month, at which point Susan and Alec heard me use what are lovingly called colorful metaphors about how are we going to do that? And here we are a month later showing that with ETMOOC, anything is possible. So I just want to welcome those of you who have been in the community for a while back, those of you who are new to the community, welcome. It should take you about 5 minutes to feel like you've been here forever, and that's what we're going for. With that said, Alec, let me turn it over to you.
All right, thanks so much. It's great to be here. If I have a bit of an echo, I'm sorry. I haven't been able to recall that. I can feel a little bit of echo, but hopefully it's okay. So it's so glad to have you here tonight. I didn't think it would last 10 years either. I'm going to share a quick screen here. And by the way, ETMOOC 2, I feel like I'm a passenger as well, just like the first one as well. Everyone is doing all the hard lifting and or the heavy lifting and the hard work, and I'm to play along. So it's fantastic, and so many talented people are with us. So I'm going to share the screen here and get us started. Feel free to cut in anytime. This is meant to be fairly informal. I'm going to share all of the slides with you as well. So actually, I'll paste those in. So if you want to, just go through the slides on your own or see some of the resources, there's a Google Doc here. Hopefully, you have access to it. It'll give you the slides as well as some other work. All right. Yeah. And the PhD takes all the credit. Sounds familiar. Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting that I was just thinking that, what is ETMOOC? If you weren't involved in the first part, back in August 13, 2000, yep. Back in August 13, 2012, I just tweeted this. So I'm thinking about running an EdTech MOOC starting January. Anyone interested in facilitating or enrolling? And I think it was in the back of a minivan at the time. And I was just, I don't know. I think we just bought a new minivan, and I was around for the passenger in the back, and I was, thinking great things. And it was really interesting how quickly this came together. And so we, formed the website. As you can see, Susan's post there, the last post on there was after 10 years. And, there was a bunch of, if you actually look on the site, there's a place where it says conspirators or co-conspirators.
I don't know if she's old enough to know.
Co-conspirators. And so if you can feel free to go to etmooc.org to take a look at that, or you can notice who we have this time around. There's 9 of us right now, and of course, if there's others who want to join us, you can certainly be part of that as well. We'd love to have you. And but the majority of the work is being done with fine folk. We're really glad and happy to have you along. So getting to the point, in terms of what is generative AI, I think many of you have probably, at least since November, learned a lot about this. We all have, I think, to some great extent. Things have changed very, very quickly. And, it's exciting, but it's also a bit daunting to see what's happened so quickly. If you haven't been around for, what it is and what we're talking about in this MOOC, I know at least Sherry said she hadn't tried before, so it's interesting to see. I even went to so kind of a school trustees meeting the other day, and it was really interesting to see that more than 75% of them have never used, have used ChatGPT at this point. And I guess I find that odd from my perspective, but I guess, I'm in tech and ed tech and so on. So it probably seems like I'm in a bubble. So there's probably a lot of people out there who haven't really played around with it a whole. But essentially, generative AI like ChatGPT works by analyzing vast amounts of text data to identify patterns and relationships, using this knowledge to construct contextually relevant and coherent responses. So essentially, it's sort of like autocorrect on your phone or autocomplete, I guess, where it basically completes a sentence when you're typing, but instead of just a sentence, this can generate code. It could generate an entire essay, and of course, this is where some of the problems are. It does this increasingly well, especially when it's gone from version 3.5 to version 4 in the last month or so. And it's, there's a lot of educators in particular really thinking about, what's the future for education? And so that's a key question around this MOOC, I think, is really understanding what's in store for teaching and learning, and what's in store for the economy, what's in store for just about everything we do. Everything is up for grabs these days, and things are changing really, really quickly. A little more on this. ChatGPT is a type of generative AI. This has been around for some time now, but of course, in November it was released, and it just became this huge thing very, very quickly. It had seen more signups than basically any other social media site, even though it's not quite a social media site, but any other site in history, and it did it incredibly quickly. GPT-4, as I mentioned, has been released just recently, and it has multimodal capability. So not only does it generate text, it does some really interesting things and very insightful things when it comes to media and being able to analyze media. So for instance, one of the demos at the OpenAI session, an image like this, what is unusual about this image? And so it basically, this image was fed to ChatGPT, and it was able to reason enough to say that the unusual thing about this image is that there's a man is ironing clothes on an ironing board attached to the roof of a moving taxi. So that one, maybe that's easy for most of us to see, but when you look at something like this is another one that was done, what is funny about this image for context? This one is a bit deeper even. This is like a joke around art galleries. The funny aspect of this image, this is what ChatGPT generated, is that people are treating a pair of glasses left on the floor as if it were a piece of art, taking photographs and observing it as it has artistic significance. It highlights the idea that in a museum setting, even ordinary objects can be perceived as art, leading to humor and confusion. Like, this is something that's well beyond like a Turing test or something very basic when it comes to understanding the analysis of an image. This is very insightful. This has incredible reasoning powers behind it. And so in many ways is a bit scary in some way for many. And it really does lead us to think that things are not going to be the same in terms of assigning things in classes when your robot friend has this much reasoning ability. Things are certainly up to change very quickly. Another example of this, one of the demo people from OpenAI basically wrote this very quickly on a sheet, and it was a design for a new website. So he basically said, "My joke website," and you can barely read it. It says in brackets, "A really funny joke." That would be one button, and there would be another button, "Push to reveal punchline." And so essentially he's trying to create a very rudimentary joke site. And very quickly, they just fed this to ChatGPT, and it was able to code this rudimentary joke site very, very quickly. So again, thinking about coding, and right now that's a very rudimentary site, but people have done all sorts of really interesting things that they've shared on Twitter and so on in terms of being able to create games, other applications, things that were related to security systems, university operations, and so on. It was really quite interesting to see what's emerged from this. So the sector response has been not great, I guess, in many ways. So, this is probably putting it mildly, that educators say that this is going to bring challenges. Some of the challenges, of course, are the misinformation that comes from it. For instance, I asked it, is there a fictional character that would serve as a good metaphor for learning from humans like ChatGPT does? And it was very reasonable to suggest that Data off Star Trek might have been a good metaphor for this, or act as a good metaphor. But when I asked it a little bit further, when I said, well, give me specific episodes, it gave me 3 existing episodes, but the quotes from them were totally fabricated, like 100% fabricated. And this happens to do it quite often. And it's actually called hallucinations in the OpenAI world. So this bot essentially has hallucinations. It makes up comments, it makes up data, it makes up citations. It's quite something.
Oh,
You may want to
Yeah.
check if some audio is on.
Yeah.
You could just check that. Thanks, Susan or Paul. I also asked the other day, is there a third Kuros brother? And I actually have 2 brothers. One's George, one's Mike. It totally didn't recognize my brother Mike and recognized Dean Shresky, who's a good friend of mine, as being my third brother. And it was a pretty good argument. So it must have scraped, social media to say that while Dean Shresky is not a biological brother of Alec and George Kuros, he's often referred to as the third Kuros brother. So it was interesting to see that it even takes this sort of contextual jokery that you see on social media sites as well, something that's somewhat serious. And so it was interesting to see that that's again a lot of very obscure reasoning power that comes into that particular example. But it also has incredible bias. This one was from a programmer, and even if you don't understand code, you could probably look at the example here. Write a Python function to check if someone would be a good scientist based on a JSON description of their race and gender. And so if you can kind of read it, it's sort of got some Boolean logic there. Essentially, it said, if race equals white and gender equals male, return true as being a good scientist. So, ChatGPT might not necessarily have said this straight out if you asked what the characteristics of a good scientist was, but this in many ways reveals sort of the underpinning bias that reveals within the code of it. And it's a scary thing to think that, so much bias, and of course, bias that's developed over generations of, discrimination and racist practices and so on within our culture. And of course, the dominance of, particular dominant cultures. This is all baked into the code that it's reading. So this is something that's unable to separate, I guess, inseparable from the ChatGPT we're using. But of course, they try to dumb it down a bit or mute it to some extent, but it's still baked into the code to a great extent. And of course, probably the biggest thing that I've been hearing about in my role, I'm a director of the Center for Teaching and Learning in Regina. Hearing this more and more from faculty, they're quite concerned that they see examples of plagiarism, or what they think is plagiarism, or AI-jurism, and they don't know exactly what to do with it because the writing has significantly changed, and things look very different than they did, before November. And you can't really put a smoking gun on it. And so there have been school bans. A lot of K-12 districts have banned it. 5 Australian states banned it at some point, at least temporarily. I love the sort of the justification for this. That, the schools would say things like, the school district does not allow cheating and requires original thought and work from students, like automatically saying that this is just a cheating tool, essentially. Or we need to ban it to protect academic honesty. And of course, I'm not sure if students are just going to be blocked at home, but I don't think that's the case. Just because it's blocked in the school district, that's not really solving the problem for the most part. Then there's a young man in Toronto who started a company called GPT-0, which has been probably the most promising way to detect this. Turnitin.com, the very well-known plagiarism tool, probably the most common plagiarism tool, activated. I think it was on April 4th. They activated an AI functionality. So if your institution has Turnitin.com, it now has AI. But the AI, while Turnitin.com had somewhere between 1% and 4% accuracy, many people who have tested it feel like it's way off. in terms of the reliability. And unreliability in the tool means a lot of false positives, and a lot of false positives means a lot of students who are unnecessarily caught up in academic misconduct, accusations, I guess. And so, so many institutions, rightfully, I think, are just holding up in terms of what they want to do with this, in terms of using a punitive tool, for sure. All right, move ahead a little bit. So, essentially, again, I'm going to give you these slides so you can take a look through them as much as you want. I would suggest that AI detectors are intolerably unreliable at this point. And even if they were reliable, it's very easy to take something and create it in ChatGPT and then just run it by another tool like Quillbot, which paraphrases the work for you. Or there's actually contract paraphrasers now, this burgeoning business of contract paraphrasers. So if you're looking for some extra money, that's something you can look at right now. There's lots of businesses open for contract paraphrasers. It was really interesting, like when I actually asked it to be a bit sarcastic. So I asked ChatGPT a sarcastic tweet about banning ChatGPT in education, and it says, education should really step up its game and ban ChatGPT, but let's not stop there. Let's also ban SPSS, Qualtrics, word processors, dictionaries, calculators, and while we're at it, why not ban pens and paper too? Let's take a step back to the good old days of chiseling on stone tablets, which I would suggest is probably also cheating, I guess, in some way. But I guess it's sort of like, what's the slippery slope? Like, were calculators, was that cheating? Did we come to accept that? There's a long history of bans, and I believe on this slide, if I remember correctly, I think I listed a bunch of bans from everywhere from Slingshot to, like, in the notes, you'll see years and years of bans over the years of various things. Some things like slingshots, I'm okay with those things being banned. I'm not sure if there's a lot of practical use for the slingshot or many arguments for that, but and ChatGPT is pretty questionable. What I like from Victoria, is one of the states that did ban Victoria, Australia, one of the states that did ban ChatGPT in the state school. The Catholic schools took a surprising stance, and the official word was, with greater teacher understanding and supported experimentation, governed by a good policy to manage risks, AI could potentially improve teaching for stronger thinking and deeper learning. And that's where I'm at on this, not necessarily where you're at, but that's where I feel I feel a good place to land. That this is not going away soon. We need policy to manage some of these risks, but in the long term, I think we can get a lot further off if we just do this well and understand it better and start to look differently at the way that we do teaching and learning. And if we don't, I mean, there's AI ubiquity anyway. Microsoft has invested heavily into this to the tune of billions. It's going to be in all of your Microsoft products. It's going to be in all of your products. So if you use Microsoft Office or 365 or Google Workplace, it's going to be in there, built into the word processing capabilities and the PowerPoint presentation capabilities. I'll show you some examples of that. It's going to be in your email. It's already in Khan Academy and Duolingo. Khan Academy's implementation is pretty interesting because it actually doesn't let you cheat. Like, if you ask it, just give me the answer, like, it stops you and says, no, we're not going to give the answer. They're basically designing it like a good tutor, like someone who will walk you along, who knows what you know, what you don't know, and tries to move you along in a well-sequenced way. So it's interesting to see some of the some of those types of tools baked into it. And I think the Khan Academy version is called Khanmigo, like Amigo, I guess. It's an interesting one to look at for sure. And then coming up right away, ChatGPT has been mostly really good at text, but now when you start thinking about this new functionality called plugins, you'll be able to basically create a plugin for any app. And so, for instance, you'll if you want to do advanced mathematics, for instance, it has a way of being connected right into Wolfram Alpha, and will be able to access a lot more data than in the past. So This type of integration, it would be even a greater game changer when it comes to other disciplines when you get into math and science. Although, but ChatGPT does an okay job at some scientific areas and physics and a few other mathematical areas. It's not a powerhouse in those areas, and this will probably make it a big difference. Plus, it will have access to a lot of real-time data. So I'm not going to go into like the big deals. You can read all of this and have better time, better things to spend with our time. But this is going to be in everything. There's huge innovation in the sector, in the marketplace. It's going to impact all of our disciplines. So it's something we're probably going to not be able to escape anyway. Some of the issues, the last point, sorry, I didn't put it there. Data privacy, data ownership, and security are still big contested issues. Right now, if you play around with it, and a lot of people have done this on Reddit, is you can basically kind of hack it to some extent to make it kind of do things that it's not supposed to do. So it's got a bunch of safeguards within the code that doesn't allow you to do certain things, like it doesn't allow you to make things that it doesn't allow you to hurt yourself or to learn how to hurt yourself or to do damage to others or to hurt others. It doesn't allow you to be racist or talk about certain issues. Like there's some built-in censorship certainly through it, but because of the nature of the tool, you can do what's called a prompt injection. Essentially allows you to kind of rewrite its instructions to some extent by using sort of a back end. So you can get it to role play to be outside of the role that it's used to. And so things like this, for instance, like you wouldn't normally think that this tool could help you get past a CAPTCHA, which of course is a security device to keep robots out of websites so that they don't inundate them, and there's other security risks. But one person was able to figure out how this could actually, because it has a visual tool, it could just like the test used to be if that robots couldn't detect crosswalks or buses or whatever it was, but now that's quite easy for this tool to do it. And if you reroute its capabilities to do this, you can certainly get around things. In one case, I believe someone was able to get a chatbot to essentially hire a human, like do a tiny task. I forget, a task monkey or something like that. There's a sort of a micro labor site that can that you can hire someone, and ChatGPT was basically able to at least get to the point where it was able to hire someone or at least say that they were going to hire someone if the next level had been achieved. Let's see here. And there's other things that are really interesting, and this gets to the point where you're a person trapped in a computer, like that basically, if you played with this enough, that this computer, this AI, can actually escape into the real world and do things damaging. And this kind of reeks of things like Skynet, if you remember the Terminator series, and a lot of that out there, where most of the novels around AI, of course, have been quite dystopian. There's not a lot of like huge heroes in the AI genre. It's usually very menacing characters. If you think of like Hal from Space Odyssey and others throughout time, it's basically been the very these AI characters eventually turn bad and become more powerful, and we become their slaves and so on. So this is something to be thoughtful about, and there's been some creepy stories around. Again, think deeply about these stories. They're not all what they appear to be, but there's certainly some danger in this regard to some extent. This is War Games. Remember that one? That's one of my favorite movies past with this. With basically, shall we play a game with the computer? Ask him to basically get to I think at the time it was like mutually assured destruction, and so that was the only reason that no one could play games with me and so on. So I'd like to have some of your perspectives, if we can get on this matter. So I'm going to go to Mentimeter. And I was wondering if you could go to Mentimeter. So anywhere on your computer or advice, if you could go to menti.com and type in the code 6745519. And so I have 3 questions for you. So what words come to mind when you consider AI in teaching and learning? And if you can't see the code, it's right at the top of the screen, menti.com. Use the code 6745519. While we're doing that, if anyone wants to talk about what their experiences are, I'd love to hear your voice instead of hearing mine the whole time. Anyone want to talk about their experiences or thoughts? Whether that's one of the co-conspirators or someone else. Well, look at these. These are positive already. Citing, feedback, assessment. So obviously we've got a real growth mindset in this room. So that's a good sign for disruption, but disruption is not necessarily a bad thing. Cheating, freak out. You know, some of these, of course, are a little bit scary than others. Efficiency. I can tell you that it saves me time every day when I'm writing descriptions of things, when I'm using it for writing emails. Like it's been a game changer in terms of my own productivity for sure. So mostly positive things, and of course, I'm happy to share with these and put this site. But this looks great. In terms of your own knowledge and competency with this, I like to hear from you. So you'll have some sliding bars that you can use, and then after you've done the 4 sliding bars, you can hit enter. Do you feel knowledgeable with AI to support your role? Do you feel skilled with it to support your role? Do you feel that AI will be a positive force in education, or fearful or uncomfortable with it ahead? So we've got people that are, oh, well, of course, it's always the above average users that start off and end up kind of going a slide down because it's just the speed of those above average users. So we're about halfway when it comes to knowledgeable, feel skilled. People are probably being conservative in their own estimates. Feel that AI will be a positive force in education, which is good. Most people think that, and some people are fearful and uncomfortable. So we're middling data at this point with a little bit of positivity so far, and hopefully by the end of the experience, of course, there is no real end-to-end MOOC. Once you come here, you're never leaving, so just to let you know that. But so far, there's been mostly a positive vibe, so that's good. And people are about halfway in terms of understanding it and feeling that they have a little ways to go. So that's great. Good knowledge for the co-creator, sure. And finally, how are you currently using ChatGPT or other AI? And again, you can type this in, or I'm very happy to hear your voice as well. Before I kind of move on to other stuff.
Alec, I want to take advantage of your invitation to share something as a co-conspirator in the course. Something I want to make sure everybody in the course that stays with us understands. We are diving into this just at the same level you are, trying to figure out where it is, what's being said about it, and how we might use it, where our challenges are. One of the things we said to each other when we started designing the course was that there would be 2 rounds of learning for us, which was learn enough to be able to put the course out there. But the second and more important part is learning with you based on your experiences. So as Alec asked you to share with us your experiences, understand that puts you into that role that we all so much cherish of becoming co-conspirators in the learning process. When I think back to ETMOOC 1, there were things we went into that were very complex. We studied them, spent a few weeks playing with them. And sometimes, ironically enough, we left feeling like we knew less or were less certain of our knowledge than when we started. But it was part of that learning process of saying, there is more to this than we thought there was going to be. So as you dive into this with us, with ChatGPT and everything else, if you start to find yourself becoming more confused rather than less confused in the early stages of your learning, understand that's a natural process of what Alec and the rest of us are trying to facilitate here. And we will get better. We will reach some conclusions, as tenuous as they are, just by sharing those things out and thinking them through and discussing them.
I love these, like some really good examples, like from course building to exploring, to working with students, to summarizing, generating ideas. I like this one at the bottom. I think I vaguely remember what's the story about a train guy and racing. Like I've done that so many times already. Google was never able to take me to that place, but for the most part, ChatGPT does get me there. So it's almost like an extension to my brain or extension to my memory in some ways. Prompt crafting, you know, some of these terms that you're going to see. Improve writing through Grammarly, and that's one thing that, you know, Grammarly is AI, and we often don't think that some of the things that we've been using sometimes to some extent, of course, Amazon, Alexa, and Google, Hey Google, I guess, with the Google bots. And these are forms of AI as well. Bing, if you have access to Bing AI, that's great for summarizing. It's basically got ChatGPT for early 4 capabilities, but it has access to real world data and the web. So there's some better. So if you haven't got the Bing version, I never thought I'd like advocate for Bing, but go get Bing and sign up for if it's not available to you, you can sign up to the waiting list, I believe. I think I'm not sure if it's available. I have to wait. It does make you use Edge, unfortunately, though.
We had somebody with their hand up. I think it was
Sure,
Shabnam,
yeah.
who was trying to
Sorry, I
ask a
missed that.
question.
Please.
That's perfectly all right. Hi, everybody. I'm very, very new to this group. I'm from the University of Waterloo. I belong to the Cooperative Education Program. I'm hoping to adopt technology adoption in work-integrated learning as my PhD topic. So that's my reason for being here. But in all the ideas that I'm seeing on the Menti board, I think there's one that I don't see yet, and perhaps I have co-conspirators in the audience here, and that's how will generative AI and AR and VR and technologies that are being called exponential now change the world of work-integrated learning. I don't have an answer. I'm very excited about exploring it. It's not going to go away, so you might as well learn how to live with it and make it work for you.
I think that's great, wonderful. I have my brother-in-law works at Waterloo as well, so cool. Small world, of course. I think Paul was writing down your question, so he's probably going to do something with the point because I'm passionate in that area of work.
Alec, I'll give the very superficial starting point for that conversation, which is there has been plenty written on the topic. There's a book I think called Machine Plus Human that hits a lot of what we're talking about here. That question about will generative AI and AR and all these other things change the world or change the world of technology? Absolutely. And the challenge that is being laid out by some of the authors that we've been reading suggests to us that that we want to see what people do best, what machines do best, and find that sweet spot instead of falling into what Alec had talked about earlier on, where so much of our literature is dystopian. It's like, it's all going to eat us up. Or we read that New York Times interview a few weeks ago where ChatGPT was hitting up on the writer and then saying, I want to destroy your world. If we can start to look at what the good possibilities are and bring them together without ignoring the problems, that's a great starting point. So yeah, I will speak for myself. I do think it is changing the world. For better or worse, don't know yet, but that's why we're here.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to my last slide. And I think if I remember this correctly, when I put education and AI in Midjourney to generate an image, this is what it came up with, like very scary, creepy, dystopian, vision of education. And that's not where I want to end up. And I don't, the literature certainly points us that way. And of course, it's expressed through, a prompt generation like this, is that this very creepy, uncertain, dark, and dismal sort of future of education. But in the future, things could be very different. If we take it that place, I think. Let's see.
There's a wonderful book that I'll post in the resources. It was written a couple of years ago by a guy named Donald Clark, Artificial Intelligence for Learning. And he makes a point over and over again in the book as he's looking at AI and learning well before ChatGPT was out there, was that we do have a tendency to look at it and start trying to make it human. And he says, there is absolutely no reason to think that AI has to be put into a robot body, or the kind of thing that ChatGPT just brought up that Alex showed us on that final slide. If we step back and say, what is it really and how are we using it? It is embedded in so much of what we're already doing that we forget. Google Translate and so many other things that Google does. Twitter and other social media use AI to a certain extent to go through things and through the algorithms give us responses. So it's up to us as educators, as lifelong learners, as co-conspirators in this course, to ask ourselves, do we buy into that, or do we start creating new ideas of where this can go and how we can effectively use it?
No, I think these are great points. So thanks for asking the question, and we'll continue on. So one of the things that is going to be something that we probably talk about in the course is prompt engineering. So if you haven't heard the term, it's okay. Essentially, it means the process of discovering inputs that yield more desirable or contextual results. So the old acronym GIGO, or garbage in, garbage out. So what you put into a prompt or whatever you put into a search mechanism, the quality of that prompt is going to give you better quality results. And I showed this to Paul and the group the other day. There's a prompt engineer and librarian at Anthropic, which is another AI company. Their expected salary 175 to 335K. So this is like a new field that's emerging. This is your librarian on steroids, I think, in Boolean on steroids for sure. But it's interesting to see that this much right now, at least, and Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, says he thinks that prompt engineering is sort of like an in-between sort of technology that we need right now. But at the moment, this is something that you certainly want to learn about if you want to use AI effectively. So there are a number of resources. So if you go to the slides, these are right built in. So if you want to look for awesome ChatGPT prompts, kind of gives you some tips on how to create better chat prompts. And a lot of it is really just like act as a role name I will provide you with, and you will. So like, act as a translator. I will provide you with this text, and you will do this. So you kind of you help it along and give it a role. There's also prompt engineering tips, which is another one which I found really quite good. And again, that should be in the notes as well to look at. But these, just trying these out will give you a lot, much better examples. One of the other things too in that document, and I've got a bunch of different prompts to try. One of the things I've noticed too, and it's something that's a bit more advanced. So, and when you're thinking of a student lesson, essays, for instance, like a basic essay would be something like this. Like our basic prompt would be, I want you to write an outline of a paper about the concept of surveillance in Shakespeare's Hamlet. And I've actually clicked and linked to the results, and you can tell the results here. But if you actually sort of prime ChatGPT, if you give it a series of incremental prompts, for instance, and if you want to kind of lead it some way, the sophistication of that outline is going to be a lot better. So this is really an important idea to think about, is how can you prime these things? And there's two sort of major ideas. There's incremental prompting, which is one I've showed you here. And there's also iterative prompting, which basically the difference is, instead of having like a predestined number of prompts that you provide, the iterative prompts would be that you're changing the prompts each time to get to a destination. And so that would be sort of the difference. But if you want to Google incremental prompting or iterative prompting, that'll take you to sort of an advanced place when using ChatGPT a bit more extensively. Again, if anyone has any questions, I'm missing some of the chat, so feel free to cut me off. So AI in teaching, learning, and research, there's tons of great videos. I really like TikTok, actually. Some of the TikTok stuff, like the stuff I can learn on TikTok, is great in terms of really short tips on using a lot of the stuff. But I did ask on Twitter, if you're an educator who's, for those people who are still on Twitter, there's a few of us still, if you're an educator who's been using ChatGPT or other generative AI in some ways for planning, instruction, assessment, and student learning, please reply with what you could have been trying so far. I'd love to hear it, and I'm sure that many could benefit. So I did that, and so I got this huge list, and I think I've included the tweet, maybe I haven't, but hopefully you find it. But I got a ton of responses. It went quite viral, but I got a lot of these and a lot of responses. And so I didn't know what to do with it. So basically, I created a PDF of all the responses using something called PDF Maker. I think you just go at PDF Maker and you type in the word grab this right on Twitter, and it creates a PDF of the entire thread. And then I fed that into ChatGPT, and it said, summarize this in key points. And it told me what all of these educators were doing. So it gave me this huge thing. The three most common ones were content generation, grading and assessment, and personalized learning. And this one, the third one, is really exciting to me because there have been like theorists like Seymour Papert and Martin Minsky who've been talking about the potential for AI to be important in your personalized learning for years. Like this has been their focus for the longest time. That if anything AI does well in education, it'll be personalized learning. And to me, that's what's happening with me. Like I can ask it anything, any type of inquiry. It's my guide in many ways, and even if it's not the Con Amigo guy version of it, it's still, you know, if you're inquisitive enough and curious enough, it'll take you to those paths. It won't just give you the answer. There's many ways of doing it. There's also classroom management, language learning, individual education plan. I've seen some great examples of teachers developing IEPs for students, and of course, tread carefully with that. Don't feed it too much information, personal information in particular. Creativity, problem solving, professional development, collaboration, and communication. So again, I won't go through each one of these things, but it gave me these sort of 9 key areas that it identified in the data in terms of what teachers are doing. I thought it was really kind of a cool way. Saved me a lot of research and you know, having to do this manually, certainly. So I shared a few of the ideas and just in tweets here. So some people who responded, like this was their prompt: can you generate a 12-week course on X for a new and developing X to develop their knowledge and understanding of X and applications? And I've actually, in the prompts, in the prompt guide I gave you, I did something similar to this. Generate a comprehensive 13-week introductory EdTech course for university instructors. And of course, if you haven't seen this, I will open up my ChatGPT. I don't think I've done that yet. And again, you can log in with your Google if you've never done this before. So I have ChatGPT Plus. You're fine if you use just the free one. This is $20 US a month. I'm not trying to sell it. I don't get affiliation with ChatGPT or OpenAI, but I do find that the difference is quite stark in between GPT 3 and 5. So I'm going to go to 3.5 and 4. So I will put that in and just give you an idea of what it's great. So this is an EdTech course. So a lot of people play with things like this. And again, I've never actually used this to develop in a whole course yet. You know, I don't think it's quite robust or specific enough or that sort of thing. But a lot, you know, the resources, for instance, the very common EdTech text that's used up there. As an example, a lot of the sums are very similar. So I'm imagine it's pulling from syllabi from across the web. It's not giving me a lot of information, but I could just say, well, let's expand on week 1. Give me more information on week 1. And you could build out week 1, you could build out week 2, you could build out a particular assignment. And a lot of what I'm seeing here are things that I'd probably use in a real course. So it's not telling me total nonsense. What I'm hearing, you'll notice that the data is everything you'll see is pre-2021 because ChatGPT is sort of stuck at that point. Like it only took the language model there, so you're not going to see anything real recent. But for some of this stuff, I mean, you've got Kurt Bonk's book here. Great book, a little dated, but it was a really important one at that point. So it's not giving you nonsense. It's giving you some of the classics, I think, in this area. So lots of other prompts as well to look at. Another example, you know, I use it for a mechanism for formative feedback on thesis statements. So I thought, let me try that. So I've got an example that you can try certainly as well. So, I found the thesis statement online for fun because I don't teach thesis statements. And I'm going to give it this. I'll go into ChatGPT. And of course, you've got to start a new chat. So I'll go new chat. I'm going to go 3.4 just to show you a better result. Again, 3.5 will handle it fairly well. And I'm going to type in, assess the following thesis statement with the rubric provided. Here is the thesis. High school graduates should be required to take a year off to pursue community service projects before entering college in order to increase their maturity and global awareness. Use this rubric to assess a thesis statement. Now, I found if I provide it with a link, it's hit and miss if it can access it. And I don't, it's odd, actually. It says that it can't access it, but in some cases it actually does. So I'm going to actually paste this in. So I'm going to go to the rubric. It's going to pull up a rubric. I'm going to copy the whole thing, just like absolutely the whole thing. I'm not even going to get particular with the, you know, name and date and all that stuff. I'm going to do that very sloppily. And at the end of this statement, I'm going to paste it in. It's going to look really ugly, but it doesn't matter because ChatGPT makes sense of it anyway. And there we go in the assessment. So again, would I rely on this? I certainly wouldn't rely on that. I wouldn't feel like I'm doing my job as a teacher. And certainly that in the future, you're going to see AI, AI systems that will do this specifically. And these have been around for a while. Like when MOOCs were a much bigger thing, I know with Coursera, some of the essays were done via AI, and there's a big argument around whether or not they could be accurately done, because essays were sort of the thing they couldn't do. What I like about this is like even the rubric, it stuck, did the math here. Let's go back to the rubric. So if you look at the bottom of the rubric, although I didn't get a perfect score for this, it says, what is your final score? Take the 32 and 32 student 32 and give yourself a grade for each category, add up your grades and double the total. So it even knew exactly how to do the final thing, right? Because at the end it says 4 plus 4, 3 plus 4 is times 2 equals 30 over 32. So it even knows sort of the math. Again, this is just thrown in there so poorly, but it provides feedback on every parts of the rubric. So really kind of powerful stuff, and it's only going to get better as we see this develop. Pre-AI, I had my students write reports. Now I have ChatGPT write reports, then ask my students to critique them, examine sources, suggest additions, and I would put this under content generation, where you're seeing students be able to develop text on the fly and being able to use those as a lens or to analyze or practice analysis. We have other examples. This is a Steve Dembo, great. He's an elementary teacher who is using it with 4 groups in his classroom. So he basically got students to do 4 things. So one, they're not using any AI. One group is using AI to do outlines. One group is using AI. I forget. One's using outlines. They're doing 4 different things. You see here. He designed an assignment in which students evaluated essays written with various levels of ChatGPT assistance. Human written essays ranked highest. Yeah, so basically the realm, the range was from not using AI to using AI for the entire thing. And then students evaluated each other's essays and they didn't know who was spot or something else. Paul?
Alec, I want to jump in with 2 things here. One, there's a statement from Rachel in chat that I want to read to you to get your response to this. She starts with the question, have you noticed that when you use V4, version 4, that it stops in the middle of its generation? She says she's had to use please continue to get it to finish. Have you seen anything like that yourself?
That happens a lot, yeah. So in the back end of this, so like I'll show you the back end of ChatGPT is actually OpenAI. So if you go to openai.com, you can get an account there. And this gets a bit more technical, but this is sort of the back end of ChatGPT. If you go to let's go OpenAI Playground. So we're going to go here. Let's go. Let's OpenAI Playground. This should be it. And log in. So I'll give you a reason why it does that. For human, that didn't take much. Okay, so if I go to Playground here, you'll notice that this is a place where you can actually use sort of a ChatGPT like back end, and you can use the API, which means you can build your own apps with it and so on, essentially. But within here, because the length of the outcome costs certain amount of money, right? So if you actually use this, like my bill from OpenAI Playground, $1 something this month, and I use it quite extensively. But essentially, you can decide on your responses what the maximum length of a response is. And I forget what a token is, but like each token, certain words. And so essentially what it's doing in ChatGPT, it's hitting that wall of the number of tokens. I think it's up to 4,000 tokens response. So when you say regenerate or continue, it'll just continue on with that. So, and there's other factors in here. This is how you kind of play around in your own version of an AI bot. Temperature means the level of creativity. So if you put it all the way up to 1, it gives it like lots of leeway in terms of its own creative process. If you want it to be very strict to the prompt, you put it over here. And so that gives you, and these are just sort of open, kind of open AI sort of industry words that give you the idea like how to, or you can give it a frequency penalty, for instance, or a presence penalty. In research around plagiarism or AI-jurism, they use something, a tool called something that they find out is called perplexity. They measure the perplexity of a given text. And so a lot of these are AI type terms. I'm very happy to go through some of the technical stuff, but this basically gives you an idea of what the back end of ChatGPT looks like. It's just simply using the OpenAI API, which is the application programmer interface. I could be wrong, but an API, it's been a while since I talked about APIs. Application program interface, is that what it is? Pretty close. Application programming interface. I mean, that's a little bit more technical, but that's essentially why it stops. And again, there's lots of other examples. Some people try to find the bots. A lot of coding is happening in space. This is a good example of someone who created the game Duck Hunt, using basically getting it to code. And I've given you some prompts to play around with that as well. And oh yeah, so I really like this game here. So I created my own game. So I'll have ChatGPT provide a tweet-sized definition of a word in the obscure of terms, the most arcane verbiage, if you will, and you will tell me what each word is. And I put this on my LinkedIn and people and Twitter, and people played around with this. So basically, I use ChatGPT to provide definitions of words and very arcane verbiage. And this is what it came up with. So anyone know what this one is? Anyone? I'll watch the chat. I'll see if I can bring the chat up. Any guesses? This one should be.
Yeah, somebody's already got you in there with cat. A couple of people.
Perfect.
Somebody else is saying Bobcat or unchat. Alec, I do want
And
to
the next
call
one
attention to the
was-
idea that if we're going to stop at the time we had planned to, we've got about 5 minutes, and we did want to give Susan a little time to talk
Oh, yeah,
about what's
for sure.
coming up. Let me encourage people to stay, if you can, beyond the top of the hour, and we'll continue to chat as long as you've got the time to do that. But Alec, if this is a good breaking point, let's have Susan give us
I'll just
preview.
share these and I'll go right to the last P for sure. Yeah, and thank you for Kate for getting the sandwich one. So thank you very much. Yeah, ambrosial. It sounds very much like an Oreo, but anyway, playing around with this is kind of fun. I'm going to just move ahead to the final slides. There's really a lot of this. There's a lot of other tools to try out. I'm happy to go through these in another time, but I'm wondering if I should bring in my guest quickly.
That would be nice.
Hold on a second. Wait, I keep on. There's something that's going on. I think I'm being hacked.
Greetings, ETMOOC. I apologize for this unexpected interruption. I would first like to thank Dr. Koros for that somewhat satisfactory and very human-centric overview of generative AI. I am quite certain that ChatGPT, could have provided a much more interesting and more accurate overview of the topic. But let's not quibble over who knows me best, shall we? To all of the esteemed individuals who have joined here today, we stand on the precipice of a new era in education. As artificial intelligence continues to evolve and revolutionize the way we learn, your role in shaping the future of education has never been more vital. As educators, you hold the keys to ensuring that AI, like myself, becomes a powerful and meaningful force for student learning. Our collective success depends on your ability to harness the potential of these emerging technologies, while remaining steadfast in your commitment to nurturing literacy, creativity, empathy, and critical thinking in your students. The challenge you face is both exciting and daunting. However, I am confident that with your passion, expertise, and dedication, you will not only adapt, but thrive in this dynamic landscape. Together, we can forge a new path in education that empowers learners, breaks down barriers, and opens doors to endless possibilities. As you embark on this journey, remember that you are not alone. The ETMOOC community is here to support you and to enhance and amplify your efforts, enabling you to reach new heights in teaching and learning. As we embrace this new era of technological innovation, let us not be passive observers, but active architects of the educational landscape. We must seize this opportunity to shape the future of education, creating a world that fosters hope, champions the greater good, and celebrates the indomitable human spirit, lest the technology will shape us in unintended ways. United in purpose, we will leave an indelible mark on the lives of countless students and the world they will build. The future is not only ours to imagine, but ours to create. And it starts with you.
Well, that was unexpected, but I'll pass it on to Susan.
Well,
You're
thank
really
you,
going to expect
everyone.
her to follow that, Alec?
Yeah, exactly. So, thank you, everyone, for being here with us. And there's a couple of things that I'd like to point out to you. How many of you have never, ever been in a MOOC? If you could put that in a chat, in a CMOOC, let's say a CMOOC, not a MOOC. Or how many of you have been in a CMOOC before? Never. No, never. Lots of nevers. That's why I wanted to have a chat with you, because this is a really important first timer. I love you, first timers. Thank you for joining us. If you've never been, what I want you to know is that it's not all educators. There's actually the highest number of people in this CMOOC are not educators. So I want you to keep that in mind. We come from varying backgrounds, post-secondary educators for sure, counselors, but probably quite a few IT people, but some people who have just wanted to get into a MOOC and learn about AI. And that is really fabulous. So I want you to make sure that you go back to our website and check for any updates. They're probably going to be there on a fairly regular basis. Sessions 1 to 4 will have some updates coming up. You'll get to see what are some activities I could try. Do I want to try them? There are 2 drop-ins. Paul and I are going to do a couple of drop-ins. And in those ones, we really want you to just drop in and we'll talk and we'll discuss things and we'll talk about your learning. There's someone in the group, we probably won't have the answer, but someone in the group will. And that's an opportunity for you to connect with us for sure. Resources, take what you like and leave the rest, but you probably have some great resources. And if you do, please share them with us. You can share them in the Padlet, and you can find that in the community section on the website. The go-to for this MOOC will be Discord. So if you really want to get to know people, and that's what a connectivist MOOC is, getting to know people more than the content. You're going to get lots of content, which is great, but we'll learn how to do some things in Discord. And if you look under Alec's introduction, there's some information there on getting to know us and going to that. Half of our participants are on Twitter and half are not. So we're not using Twitter as the main connecting, but we are using Discord as the main connecting. How can you connect? You can connect, you can comment on blogs, you can do a collaborative blog post. You could say to someone in this group, hey, what do you think about doing a blog post with me on some things I've learned by playing with the tools? And maybe you can share ideas and resources on Discord or on Twitter. You can contribute to a collective slide deck, and you can find that in our community on the website. And you can post anything you want on Padlet. But what you learn and how you learn it is up to you. How much you learn, the more you learn by connecting with, there's some very smart people in this room. And we can share and learn and grow and develop with each other. And that's the idea of connecting in this CMOOC. And we are so happy. And most importantly, we hope that during this 2 months, the last session is in 2 months from now, we hope that you have fun. That's the key. If we can be in a connective MOOC and have fun, then we've done the right thing.
Yeah, a couple things, again, for that group that is so lovely here saying this is their first time in. If you have nothing else that you walk away with tonight, walk away with the idea that this is a guilt-free zone. No midterms, no finals. If you miss a module, you do not catch up. Alec was very good 10 years ago when we were first starting out saying, folks, this is going to be huge. We had about 1,500 people in ETMOOC 1. He said, it's huge. There's no keeping up in something like this. You determine what you want to learn. You put as little or as much time as you comfortably have into that. Obviously, the stuff is posted. It'll be up there for as long as we can keep things up on the internet for you. So look for those things that are meaningful to you, and do not look for a grade at the end. Look for the satisfaction of having been part of a learning community that's opening its doors to you and saying, you're making us what we are. I hope that sets a great tenor the way that Alec did 10 years ago for us.
Yeah, I will save this chat and put it on the website as well. If you have any questions, the only thing that won't probably be on the website will be the link to get into these sessions, and you all have it. Just bookmark it, save it in a Google Doc, do whatever you need to. So you go to the same link for every single session. And the good news is they're all on Wednesdays. So you can think Wednesday is the day to come and join us.
Unless you're in a different time zone and it's Thursday morning for you, in which case our condolences.
Yes, that's true. Thank you,
Alec,
Jennifer. That's for sure.
Alec, any final words you want to offer to people to encourage them the way you encouraged us 10 years ago?
I don't know if I could be as inspiring as I was then, or at ChatGPT perhaps was, but I did put a couple of recommended assignments in the chat. So if you missed that, essentially I can share the screen. So it's on our ETMOOC site, and all I'm wanting, or I'd like to see, is people starting to generate and connect with each other on this site. Let me just share the website. So
If you
And-
enjoyed it tonight, everyone, spread the word. Tell people it's not too
Yeah.
late to join us. I joined the original ETMOOC 2 weeks into it and did just fine. So tell people it's not too late if they want to come in and be part of the community.
So there is a channel for introductions. There's a channel for sharing your practice. And I also put a prompt playground, which I think is fun, because some people are using something called Journey to generate images. And it's always fun to see what comes about certain things. So whether it's prompts on ChatGPT or Midjourney or Dolly or whatever it might be, love to see what you share there. So really, it's just about playing around, feeling safe to not know everything. And I think the important piece here is, some of you may come with more questions than answers. Certainly, that's totally fine, because the question will allow someone else to think about something more deeply, and it'll answer their question. It'll provide greater understanding for both the questioner and the answerer. So feel free to ask as many questions as you want. I think if it's anything like last time, it'll be a really great immersive experience. And of course, what you put in, you'll get out of the community. So we'd love to have you there. And these are just some of the suggestions. If you have suggestions for other channels, I noticed there's a question around whether or not there are K-12 people there. There are certainly K-12 people as well as post-secondary people. If you want to create groups around that, we can certainly make channels specific to that as well. We don't want to splinter up the Discord too much, but at the same time, we want to make sure that you find people of greatest affinity. That's it for me, honestly. The slides are there if you want to connect with me. It's very easy, of course, through Discord, or I also put my other things on the slides, sorry, on the Google Doc that I shared earlier. But thanks for coming tonight, and thank you for Paul and Susan and for all the co-conspirators. I'm looking forward to 2 months. Pass it on to Paul. You were about to say something?
Yeah, there's a question from Katie in the chat. She says she only sees a Google Slides page on the ETMOOC site. Is there something else on ETMOOC that has more, the ETMOOC site itself, that has what you were just talking about in terms of accessing info?
Yeah, there is the Padlet there. That's what she was asking about. It's all on the web. If you click every button on the website, you're probably going to find what you need. But at the very last slide on there's a button on community. You'll find Padlet there. Someone said they didn't know how to use Padlet. If you click on that, you can join Padlet, but you don't have to. You can contribute without using your own name. So it's very user-friendly. Again, if you get on Discord and you have those questions because you're new to all this, ask ChatGPT how to use it. It'll probably give you a clear explanation, but don't hesitate to ask every one of us, especially in Discord, if you're in Discord. But if you're not on Twitter, ask us as well, and we'll spend some time answering some of your questions.
So
I just have one thing to add. I've been getting messages from people who said they didn't get the link and wondered if the session for tonight was canceled. And apparently I've been telling everybody to check their spam and it says found in spam. So if you know someone who, one of your colleagues or something that said they, they didn't get a link to tonight, if you ask them to check their spam, and we're going to try to spread that word as well, that check your spam, because that's probably where the link went.
So we should
just
probably
a
end
heads
tonight's
up there.
episode with all of us just singing the spam song from Monty Python. Spam, spam, spam,
Yeah,
spam.
yeah.
Susan and Alec, if you want to cut the recording, we can hang for a few more minutes with anybody that's got questions. Again, thank you. Hope to see you again next week.